Back here in the state, the Illinois General Assembly passed a bill that would address concerns from service providers that contract with the state. The bill does so by stating that agencies must send vouchers to the comptroller within 30 calendar days of receipt of a proper bill or invoice from a contractor. Agencies would also have 30 days to notify contractors of defects in a bill or invoice. Providers cite frequent delays in receiving contracts and late pay for their services. This legislation comes as federal cuts threaten funding sources, leaving the state looking to fill those gaps.